Hello everyone, this is Zach Stone here for the December 2016 webinar, and I'm joined by Mischelle Davis again this month. We're going to talk about how to systematically track your marketing channels. We got a lot of great feedback from the last webinar, but we wanted to dive into the information that Mischelle was sharing a little bit deeper so that people could do it themselves and really understand how all these things work together, because tracking is so important. And with a new year starting just around the corner, we want to make sure that everyone's able to start the year fresh with their data and their tracking, or be able to go back in time and make sure that everything's nice and consistent. So what we're going to go over on the call is how to set up your own tracking sheets, determine what's working, what's not working, what you need to track to get accurate ROI numbers, how to actually track your marketing and advertising success over time. Everyone has different channels that they're trying out and working on, and we want to make sure that you're really looking at each individual area and making sure that you're getting positive ROI. And then we want to make sure that your data is consistent and usable. I've seen a lot of tracking sheets where people have used several versions of the same reference point, and things get really messy when you're not consistent. So we want to make sure that all this data is nice and consistent and usable. And then to end it, we're going to talk briefly about how lead classification and the form logic are going to be used moving forward through DSS. So I'm going to hand it over to Mischelle. Mischelle, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
So glad to be here.
Great. And I'm sending the presentation over to you right now, and we'll switch that over and we'll get started.
So when we spoke, I think it was last month or the month before, we got a lot of feedback from people that they were a little bit overwhelmed with the amount of data that I track and the level I track it. And what's crazy is that presentation, I had actually already scaled it way back to try to keep from scaring people. So you've got to walk before you can run. You have to crawl before you can walk. And so we're going to backtrack a little bit and hopefully show you how a starting point and how you can build over time tracking your data, and give you a little bit of a roadmap. And again, I want to reiterate from the last one why we even do this, right? A race car driver is not going to win the race if he walks up to his car, puts his hands on it, and goes, "Wow, the car feels ready." He's checking the gas and the oil and the tire pressure, and they're constantly checking everything because it's about the performance of the vehicle that's going to win the race in the long run. Or even when you load your family up for that cross-country road trip or whatever, Daddy's got the tire gauge out, and we're stopping for gas. We're reading the gas gauges. It's important. If you don't do these things, you're not going to win the race, or you may not even end up where you want to go. So that's the number one reason this is all really, really important. I wanted to show you really quickly, if my presentation is going to let me. Uh-oh, what's happening? All right, we're going to have to back out of that because it's not. There we go. Okay. So phase one, and this is mostly what we're going to work on today, is you have to start somewhere. So your baseline data is going to be how much money are you spending on advertising, the number of website visitors, the number of potential client calls you get every month, and the number of new clients you sign up. If you don't track anything else, if you've never tracked anything before, this is where I want you to start. Even though tools like Foster Web Marketing's DSS and Google Analytics and lots of other tools give you a lot of data, I know that can be really overwhelming at first. So it's okay when you're getting started into the measurement game to ignore a bunch of that stuff. Get comfortable with sort of the baseline things and then expand over time. You need a baseline anyway. When I took my kid to the pediatrician yesterday, the first thing they do is check the pulse, the fever, height, weight, and blood pressure. They do that every single time because that's the baseline of the health measurements. These four things are the baseline of your marketing measurements, right?
Right.
Phase two, which could for you be a couple months from now or long, down the road, you would be adding other pieces. So as I show you these, the red would be the new. So segmenting by medium, the source of the traffic, the most popular content, the number of calls you get per practice area. When we first started, in terms of potential client calls, it was, and by the way, even though we have other data collection methods now, I still have our receptionist do tick marks on a piece of paper because that's like a backup or a data validation. But every single call, even if it's not for your practice area, even if they're calling for somebody else by accident, you track every call that comes into your office that's from somebody who's looking for a lawyer, because the calls that are what you want and the calls that are not what you want are both important in terms of later on tweaking your advertising or your marketing efforts. Phase two, when you've gotten through phase one and phase two, rather phase three, you're going to add other pieces, the most popular offers, the number of people who turn into an offer response from an offer response to a potential client, which pages convert, the quality of the leads, all of these things. So you expand that over time. Later on, you're adding things like, when it's somebody talked to a potential client, which team member was the one who closed them, what emails did they send, what things or factors did that potential client say was important in their decision. You might add A/B testing of different creative or messages on your website. So over time, you start getting what you say, so it just grows and grows and grows. But it's okay in the beginning to just start off simple with this basic advertising information. And that's where we're going to start. Or even if you don't advertise. If you don't advertise and you think you want to advertise in 2017, I would say you need at least 2 or 3 months of data where you're just tracking these really simple data points of website visitors, calls, and new clients. Because how will you know if that advertising is working or not if you don't track those things? So if all that makes sense, then, and have I communicated that articulately, Zach, do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I mean, if you can remember back to any kind of statistics class or math class that you might have taken in high school or college, it's really important to keep it simple and be consistent with all that information. You can always add additional data points later on, but you're not going to be able to clean up something that you made way too complicated right off the bat, and you're not understanding what's going on from the very beginning. So it's really important to do this kind of progressive state of finding more data points over time to add so that you can track more and more and figure out what's working on a whole different level with different areas.
I love that you use the math analogy. So where we're starting today is like the 4th and 5th grade math, where we're going to do a little bit of long division and come up with some percentages or fractions or ratios, and then down here it's like calculus, right? It's
Yeah,
and
exactly.
you have to build on all those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to switch over to the spreadsheets. So now we showed you some spreadsheets last time, and we went back and we tweaked them a little bit to make it more simple. So, and I think they're going to put this out for you somewhere where you can download it. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So this is my simple scoreboard. In the simple scoreboard, we're just going to track website visitors. And for this example, I put television spots, but that could be any kind of advertising. You could just ignore that, right? So spots and cost in dollars, the number of potential client calls you got in a month, and that's contacts, right? That's whether they did a chat, they did a form submit on your website, they gave you a phone call, they sent you an email, however they came in, you're tracking all of them as a group. You'll segment that later. And the number of new clients. With this simple data and the spreadsheet that we've given you, it will actually go in and do the math for you on the cost per lead, right? And this is, an overall cost per lead, like a gross cost per lead. The percentage of potential clients that actually turn into cases, and the cost per new client. And it will automatically, give you these nice little graphs as well. So over time, when you get into higher levels of measurement, you'll actually, have some of these data points overlaid so you can see the relationship of, did I spend more in advertising? Did that advertising spend increase, also, increase my website visitors? Did those website visitors increase, potential client calls and signups, or meetings, all that. So I kept it really simple and spread out for you like this. This is like the simplest possible dashboard I could give you. But like my dashboards now, which I don't use Excel, I use a Microsoft Business Intelligence tool, are so overlaid and nuanced, it's like sick. It would make your head spin.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that people aren't, if you're not an Excel person, don't freak out when you see all these numbers and everything. This overview sheet is pulling the data from these other tabs. So as she put in that yellow right there, you don't want to make any updates to this part of the sheet. You want to make updates to your data sheets so that it'll update all this information for you and all the equations will work properly.
Right, so these any cell that is like this sort of yellowish right here, it has the formulas in it and you just want to leave it alone. It'll come pull that. Okay, and the same for any one of these that says overview or summary, you're not inputting data in those. Okay, if it says overview or summary, it's going to do the math for you. I did the Excel for you. You're just going to enter data into either TV post logs, and I used TV as an example, but it could be radio, you could have no advertising, it could be your an export from the reporting tool if you do online advertising, right? I could be anything. Then potential client data, which you will pull directly from whatever case management system you use, and I'm going to show you how I do it in mine. And then, or actually this is potential client data, which we also do from the case management system, which eventually you'll be doing in DSS. DSS keeps, adding more functionality. So we're going to migrate off of our case management system to do this into DSS, or at least create an integration so that DSS and our case management system exchange data. And so there you'll have your potential client data, you'll have your cases opened data, and your website visits. So this is super simple. If we go back to that PowerPoint, it's the version 1 here, phase 1. Oops, right here. It's just the most simple of data. Okay. So let's see, how do we get this data and how do we put it into the spreadsheet? So let's look actually at website visits, okay? You're not going to mess with the yellow. You've got 2 data points, which is the date and the number of website visitors that I need you to go get. So how do you do this? Well, let's go to Google Analytics. So this is not my Google Analytics. It's actually for our main website. This is actually for a website we no longer use, but still points at, or forwards traffic to our main website. So these numbers are not very impressive at all, but I'm not going to share my data on a public broadcast, so don't expect that you're going to see that, right? Yep. So, but really, really simply, again, Google Analytics has tons of data in here that could be really scary what to do with. We're going to start it off simple. On the main overview page in Google Analytics, when you first log in, right here is export, okay? Super simple. So you can do this as an Excel, XLS, or a CSV. So I'm going to do CSV. And it's going to ask me to, go ahead.
I was just going to mention, I always recommend exporting in CSV files because if people don't know, it clears out all that formatting that might be already embedded in there that might create issues in the future. So it's always good to export data in CSV files, just as a rule of thumb.
Which is exactly why I do it. So, so you're going to save that file, right? How easy was that? How many clicks was that, Zach? Okay, export CSV,
Join.
right? And you're
Yep.
doing this again on the main overview page because all we want is visitor data. So now I'm going to go to downloads. And, oh, you can see I did a test download earlier. So I'm going to double click on that. And that opens up in Excel, right? And it gives me the date and the number of sessions or visits. Okay, how easy is it to just copy that data, go into the Excel spreadsheet I gave you, right? And then, now of course I'm about to overwrite data here, but you go to the first cell and hit paste, and there it is. So one thing you'll notice if we hit the back button is these cells that I don't want you to mess with, when you import data here, I've got a formula that's pulling the month, the year, that kind of thing for you. That way, when we go back to our main overview, this January, February, March, and these counts, it's doing all this, it's pulling all this data for you, right? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
So all you had to do is copy and paste that data from that other spreadsheet that took 2 mouse clicks to export, and you stick it in here, right? That's all you had to do. And sorry, I got off my thing there.
no, you're good. And I just wanted to, 2 little Excel tricks that you probably already know that others might. If you press back, and instead of just pasting the data as is, if you right-click and paste, you can choose the paste special 1, 2, 3, and that'll just paste the numbers and keep all the formatting that you had previously if you've got OCD like me.
Yeah, so I'm totally with you, and you know, I'm a Microsoft nerd. Well, I used to work at Microsoft, right? So I love all those little tips and tricks. I didn't want to complicate it too much if people, because I know so many people are scared of Excel, right?
Right, yeah.
But basically, see, once you pop that in there, that is going to change the data. So if we go back to the overview, that's going to change. So all that January numbers went away on website visitors because we pasted over that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back. So what you'll do when you get this spreadsheet for you, you're going to go in and you're going to delete all my data. You're going to leave these other cells, right, so they don't go away because you need those. But these white cells, you're just going to paste over it, okay? So let's do also for like potential client data or for cases open data, which I get from Needles. We use Needles. So let's go to, I did some screenshots here for you. Actually, really quickly, let's look at this. This is a screenshot from Needles of some of the data that I have the potential, you know, the intake person gather. So we track incoming intake mode. So like if it's a phone call, there's a drop down here that says phone. If it came in as a chat or as a case submit form, or they sent an email to me or Chris because they know us, whatever it is, incoming intake mode, how the person initially contacted us, we track. Referred by, and sometimes there's multiple referred bys, like somebody might say, you know, we ask every person, how did you hear about us? Well, they might say, my friend told me, or I got the book, or I saw your ad on such and such, and then I ordered the book. Whatever it is, we have multiple things here because they might say multiple things, but also because on the Foster Web Marketing form, when you get a contact form, it'll tell you. So what search engine did this prospect use? Google, right? I'm going to, because I know they did a search, I'm going to add here one of my referred by sources is Google. Why? I care in Washington and Seattle because I've got thousands of people who aren't allowed to use Google at work. They have to use Bing, i.e. Microsoft employees. I want to know how many cases, right? And so that's all right here. The other thing that on some forms, you guys will actually have here what page they were on. Well, actually, here it is right here. What page were they on when they filled out the form, right? So that's another thing that I ask my intake people. Where'd it go? Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Right? So web page contact. What page were they on when they contacted us? The amazing thing is I had to build this, and this gets entered in by hand in our office, but because of the integrations now and the new features that Foster's adding to the whole lead qualification process, all of this data will be in there already. Did this person order a book from us in the past or have some other contact? What was the initial conclusion? Was this a good case or not? Are they shopping for another attorney? This one's a critical one that we've had to do, this contact date, which we won't have to anymore because of moving things into the Foster Web Marketing DSS. But if, we have people in the office vetting the leads only Monday through Friday, but if the person contacted us on Saturday night, the needles timestamps the date something was entered, right? And I didn't want to throw off my data in terms of what day a call came in, so we had to add this contact date for if it's being entered at a different time. So stuff like that.
And that's really important too. Time of day, day of the week, all those types of pieces of information can give you really valuable insights, especially if you were to not be tracking it properly. So Michelle's done a really good job of making sure that she's got data integrity as she's adding this information, and gives herself a way to make sure that everything is correctly entered.
And the thing is, a lot of this data, this will amaze you. You know, when I talk about the phased approach, and I showed you all my, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, some of this data we started tracking long before I started analyzing the data, because I knew at some point in the future I would want to look at it even though I wasn't ready. I wanted the data in there. Mm-hmm. Right? So a good example would be well, that contact date. I started collecting that long before I really dug into it. A couple of other things that we put in here, like if we refer the case out, there's some stuff here. If we rejected them, we have the reasons, the reject type, and if we lost the opportunity, if they hired another lawyer, they never called us back, whatever, we track that too. So I wanted to throw that up there. But in Needles, which is what we use, we can create all kinds of reports, and this is just one, and this is just one day of data, I think, from back in May. But this one report that that I use for the scoreboard, which is what I call my my data stuff. The intake was taken, who was the staff person, the potential client first and last name, the type case, if it's an MVA, a subcategory like drunk driving, trucking, whatever, referred by. A lot of times the intake person doesn't have any information on the referred by, or the person they're talking to just starts talking so fast that they don't, they don't get that. But Ian and I in my office, we will go back through like Foster Web Marketing or Call Tracking Metrics or one of the other products that we use, and then we'll go back and we'll add that data in. But right here, that incoming intake mode, look at this. Chat, web form, chat, web form, chat, web form, web form. So, super important data, opportunity loss. So when I'm doing that, here, this is like, I'm about to show you the most amazing trick which will help you anytime, anywhere, with any kind of data like this, when the export of the data is like the scariest thing for you. Okay? In Needles, there's this little print box here. Okay? So I don't use the export feature in Needles because it's too complicated and it's crazy and you have to know SQL and all that, which I do, but even then it's like it just takes too much time. So I hit print, and then the next thing is print to file. On the print screen, instead of choosing the printer, I'm going to print to file. And when I do that, it's going to come up, and just like a regular save as, when you're, like if right now I was going to do file save as, comes up with the same kind of little screen like that. And right here, where I'm choosing how to save this PowerPoint, in this save as, print to file example, you're going to save your file as Excel with headers, and it's going to end up looking just like that file that Zach and I showed you here a minute ago. It'll end up looking just like that, right? Super great trick. So there is no excuse for being afraid of how to get your data out of anything. By the way, this same trick works with Google Analytics or almost anything else, right? And again, then with my needles information, right, because it'll come back looking just like this, right, except it'll have date, name, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to copy. I'm going to go into my spreadsheet. I'm going to find the page that's about potential clients, and I'm just going to copy and paste that data in just like we did before, right?
And
it's that easy.
It's simple and to the point, and that's perfect. One person did ask Michelle what Needles was, and essentially Needles is a case management software. You might use something like TrialWorks or Clio, or you might not have a case management software. You might use something a little bit more archaic, but it's a very sophisticated case management software that is a little scary to look at first, but it's got all the right data points and all the good information that you want to track.
So, and the thing I got to say about case management, using case management software as a potential client management or lead, management system, is they weren't built to do that. They were built to manage cases, right? And so there's so much customization and so much stuff that's not intuitive, and it's a big pain in the ass. So the fact that Foster Web Marketing is now building all this stuff into DSS, and it's easier to use, and it's in a, it's browser-based, it's easy to export, is like a godsend. So, thank you, Merry Christmas from Tom Foster and the team at Foster Web Marketing. So, don't freak out about me using Needle. I started customizing that a long time ago, and because of my software background, it's easier for me to customize it. You don't have to do that. Foster's making that easier for you. Zach, can you show them, if we switch screens, how to get, so my potential client data that I just pulled out of Needle, show them how they would get that out of Foster.
Yeah, no problem. So this is the screen in DSS that you're typically used to seeing. What we're going to do is go into the leads report section by date. So essentially from this screen you can select a month, a day, whatever it is. So let's say we're doing December 2016. Up here, just so you guys know, if you click this top header, it's only going to select 20 of the leads in this list. So if you want to export the entire list, you can go up here and it will say all, click that, and then you can export that data. So I'm going to export to my desktop, open it, and now this is kind of what Michelle was talking about. We tracked the sent date, sent time, who it was, their email, phone number, address, everything, how they contacted you, what the offer was, if it was a report download, any additional information, if there was a referral that was tracked. So this was from webmail. If there are keywords that we're able to snag.
And look at this. They got all this data here. You don't have to initially in phase one use all this data. So that when I get this report from Foster, and in my expanded version of all this stuff, I've run a bunch of different reports and export stuff, like on offers and which pages case submits came in on and all kinds of stuff. But the first thing I do is I go in here and I delete all the columns I don't need, right? Because they're a big distraction, right? So don't freak out over all this data. Just pick what you need for version 1 of your reports, right? Look how easy that is to do.
Exactly. And so you'll see these new column headers, and this is the lead classification section where you're going to look at the case type, the source, the score, what action you took, and just so that everyone knows, we're going to be building out this section even more so in the coming months. I have a bunch of enhancements from Mischelle, and I have a bunch myself from other people that I've spoken with that we'll be adding. But Mischelle was showing earlier where in Needles she had that little drop down. So if you have a filter button, it selects whatever is listed on this section. What you want to make sure that you do. I was looking at someone's data sheet recently, and referral was spelled like 5 different ways. So that made the data really inconsistent and hard to break down. I had to do a lot of searching and replacing and kind of mess with things to make it work properly. Make sure that you have a consistent way that you're naming things and tracking things.
That is so important. Oh my gosh, I spend more time cleaning up data than anything else. So for people who are doing it in Excel, though, sometime we should do like, and for people who are not afraid to try some like advanced Excel formulas for, actually searching the cell and looking for, like for example, like for my TV stations I do advertising on, because sometimes, people enter in differently. As long as they got the call letters of the TV station correctly somewhere in there, I've got a formula that'll pull that out, put it in a different cell, so I don't have to spend all that time doing the search and replace.
Yeah, that's definitely a really, really good idea. Another thing that might be helpful when you start to dig through all this data that I remember when I saw someone do this, I had a mild freak out. But if you hit Control Shift and then the arrow to the direction that you want to grab the data from, it's going to select up until that last data point. So I just selected every piece of data in this entire sheet without dragging everything across. It was just two flicks of a button. So those kind of little tricks you're going to find over time are going to be really helpful for you to streamline these processes and make sure that everyone's doing a consistent job of putting in this information. Mischelle,
one of the reasons we run that report, that scoreboard report that I showed you from Needles, and we run every week, we run that, and we do a weekly meeting with the intake team, is I beat them up over, why are these cells empty? How come you didn't enter that? Why did you enter that way? I want it this way. I mean, so if you're not reporting it, and if you're not calling them out in entering it wrong, then it makes your job harder on the back end, and you're paying them to do it your way. So,
Exactly. Yeah. So you need to make sure that it all makes sense, and you're able to consistently grab that information. That's like my biggest thing. And then you'll be able to quickly kind of dig into some of the stuff. You can kind of see where our contacts are coming from just from this quick pivot chart. Michelle's made all these charts for you, so you don't have to worry about all that. And so you can expand upon what she has, because it's really the basis for a future really good tracking methodology. So thank you for putting together that Excel sheet. Mischelle, did you have anything else you wanted to show on your screen?
Well, we should show them just really quick what in details on each of those other summary tabs, and
okay.
And then I think we're good and can go to questions.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so going through here again, so you got your website visit data down here on this tab, new cases, right? And make sure you get that case type in there. You need that. Case number, that's in there, but that could be any other data point. Later on, things like where the cities that your clients live in, and we're looking right now on, when our lease is up in a couple years where we want to go, and so having the data on the zip codes where our potential clients and clients come from is really important. Who talked to that potential client? Super important, and the source, right? So making sure you get that in here. This, by the way, this data, the reason these date formats look weird is once something is made into a case in Needles, it changes the date format for some reason. It's kind of crazy.
Oh, that's weird.
TV post logs, I wanted to show you this one. And again, I just put TV in the example I gave you. But so the month, day, the air date, the air time, whether that's AM or PM, the station, the program name, right? This is stuff your TV or radio station or whoever you're advertising with, if you advertise, and it's not cost effective in all geographies, but your sales rep should send this to you, and you should say, send me an Excel spreadsheet on the 30th of every month. I want a column that says this, 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 and this. And they'll send it to you, and you don't even have to do all that export stuff. So the program name, how much you paid for that advertising spot, sometimes they throw in freebies, which would be 0, and then the advertising creative. So here I might have, I don't know, the name of the offer. Maybe I have 5 different ads for one offer, and so it's, ad number 1, ad number 2, ad number 3, because later when I get to more complex tracking, knowing which ads ran and the correlation of those to the number of phone calls is really important, right?
Yeah.
So that's what's in these basic ones, but you can copy these tabs, add new tabs when you add new data points.
And I think the TV post logs can work really well with even like promotions or promoted profiles. So if you're spending, let's say you're spending $1,000 a month on a promoted profile on lawyers.com, track that in a sheet like this. Break down how much you're spending each day, how many leads you're getting from lawyers.com, both from DSS and from the people answering the phones, to make sure that you can actually break that down and be able to say, all right, it was worth it this year for us to spend 12 grand over the course of the year for lawyers.com because we got 12 cases and they all had an average value of over 3 grand. And so that's the kind of stuff you can start to break into if you're tracking all these different data points.
Yep. So you can see I accidentally left you guys some data in here from, I think this is really old stuff, but some, from some of my other, you can see there.
Catch.
Yeah, so there's stuff like that, or you can see here, Davis Logger Tosh 30, that's the name of an ad, right? So it looks like I didn't, anyway, so data's in there.
We'll
okay,
clean
so
it
then,
up a little bit before we send it to everyone too.
Yeah. So then TV summary. So this is going to pull from the post log. So the data that's in here is going to get pulled automatically into here. It's going to tell you how many spots ran in each month on each station, the percentage of the overall cost, and the cost. Super easy. This over here is going to show you the months you spent the most money are going to show up darker. Easy, done. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have that source, the station here, that's not going to show up correctly. All right, and then on the PC summary, again, the number of potential client calls in the month. This data is coming directly from potential client data, right? So it's counting the number, and it's counting by the source. So you had 233 potential calls that month. 7 came from this station, 136 from that other ad. Well, gee, that tells me this advertising station might not be working as well for me, or this one either. So I put this data in here so you could see, why would I keep spending money with a particular station, and here's the cost of, why would I keep doing that if it's not working? And then the PC type summary. So this one, again, on that potential client data, because you're putting in here the case type, right? So this is going to tell me how many calls of each type. If you don't do medical malpractice and you're getting a bunch of medical malpractice calls, that tells you got to change something. Or if you want dog bite cases, but all your calls are car accident cases, then that tells you you need to do something, right? And then I also, just as an example, put in here, it's calculating the day of the week. When are more of these calls coming in? For staffing reasons, you might want to know that. If you've got your potential client who took the call, right, then later you could come in here and you could see who's taking more of the calls, who's closing more of the calls. If the data's in there, you can expand on that, right? Mm-hmm. So, but again, this is like version 1. So I hope this is more simple than the last one. And I can help you customize it. But once you have the data in there, you can add new tabs. It's easy to copy my formulas and add, new lines of data here and make it work for you. So I don't know what else to say there.
I think that is perfect, and we are out of time. So do we have any questions? No question. So obviously it was a lot more simple, Michelle. We all really appreciate you taking the time to do this. It's really great to hear from someone who has this down and is doing such a wonderful job tracking across the board. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, and thank you for adding all these new features to the DSS to make it, more simple over time. I'm so psyched about it.
Of course, we're always trying to make it better, so please pass along any feedback, not just you, Michelle, but anyone. If you have enhancements for DSS that you want to see us move forward on, we're always looking for new, better ideas. So keep passing them along to us because DSS is only as good as that feedback. So thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a great afternoon. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Michelle.